it's a rainy day today. It's raining this whole week. And what better way to spend a rainy day than making a happy lady video? I've been working on a lot of other things this week, so I promise you this video is not going to be as long as all the other videos. I'm focusing on an awesome announcement and then just a few things in the headlines this week. So rest assured, it will be a shorter video. First of all, I just want to mention, I've had some people reaching out to me and asking me, hey, I never get the alerts for your videos. I'm subscribed to your channel, but I never get notified when you have a new video. So for those of you who aren't tech savvy, I just want to throw it out there real quick that if you look down where the subscribe button is, there should be a little bell. And if you click on that bell, it'll make it so that you start getting notifications every time I release a new video. So go ahead and check and see if that bell has been clicked. Another thing I want to bring up real quick is that if you enjoy watching these videos and you like these messages, then let YouTube know by clicking on the like button. Prior to YouTube disabling all of my comments on my channel, my videos would get up to 700, 800, even 1,000 views per video, but now they're just down in the 400s. Since I've been censoring my videos, it's now lowered the views significantly. So I get on average about 400 to 500 views per video. And out of all of those views, I get on average about 15 to 26 likes per video. That's a small percentage. To help work against what YouTube is doing to censor these videos, it would be really helpful if you do like these videos and you do enjoy them to click on that like button, because what that's going to do is notify YouTube and the community that this is a video that people are liking, and it's going to push it out there and help people find these messages. So if you like the video, just take a second to click on the like button. Not only will it help out this channel, but it will help people who are looking for these messages be able to find them. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, another announcement. I just wanted to put it out there that the Believers Building Bridges event that was scheduled for the end of May has now unfortunately been canceled. We received an email from Lynn that the All is Alive and Well and Independence event that the stake president is over, where he brings all the community together, people from different churches, they have a potluck dinner, and they build those relations and help improve their community. So that event got scheduled by the stake president after our event had been scheduled, and Lynn felt that it was important for them to go support that event and be a part of it, since a lot of people on the Believers Building Bridges team are also a part of Independence is Alive and Well, which are very similar in purpose. So our event has been canceled, and it was interesting because when I got this email, here's a screenshot, there's the number 311. That just was a reminder that what's happening in Independence right now, especially with this Independence is Alive and Well initiative, is important work that we can be doing in our communities in this 11th hour. And I know I've talked about it before, but again, I just want to mention how neat it is. I wish we could be doing this in all of our communities, all over the world. But yeah, in the city of Independence, Missouri, the stake president is over this initiative where they meet often, and people come in from all churches and they have these meetings and they plan these events where they can bring the community together and talk about how to improve their community and work together to bring about that unity and serve the people of their city. They're taking care of the homeless, the lonely, the widows, helping people find jobs, educate them, fixing up the city. They're doing so many wonderful things, and as they come together and unite and work together to serve each other, well, that's when amazing things happen. And that's the kind of work that the Lord wants us to be doing in this 11th hour. I don't have any news about Believers Building Bridges events going forward, but if I do, stay tuned. You know I'll share them here. Okay, real quick, I want to talk again about the event that I've been asked to be a part of that's coming up this September at Weber State University. I've been asked to be on the planning committee, and each week as we meet, it's coming together more and more. So it started out as just this theme of let's have this Zion conference where we can bring people together from all different churches here in Utah, especially here in northern Utah where I live. Let's bring all these people together and talk about how we can build Zion communities where we live, and we can work together and have that unity. But as we've been meeting more and more, starting to feel like that this is going to be more than just a conference. So we're not going to call it a conference anymore. We're calling it an event. It's going to be an experience. So far as of now, we're calling it a Christ Power event. And the whole purpose of this is for people to walk away feeling like they had an Alma the Younger experience, feeling like they had a mighty change of heart and they've been transformed. So we don't want it to be just another conference where you come and sit down and listen to speaker after speaker and you get some inspiration, you get some ideas, you meet some people, you walk away feeling like, yeah, that was good. We want this to be more than that. We want this to be a powerful experience where we're in the building together with people from many different churches from our community, and together we have a life-changing experience, a mighty change of heart, where when we walk away, we feel completely changed. We're passionate, we're motivated, we want to go out and do this third day power in the 11th hour kind of work. We want to bring everyone together, gather them in, and uplift and unify, which will bring about Zion, one heart and one mind and one purpose, which is what we need to be doing to prepare for the Lord's return. So I'm really excited about this. Stay tuned for more details. Of course, I'll be sharing them throughout these videos. And so we're not just looking for anyone to speak, we're looking for people who know how to bring about profound experiences, who can really move in the Spirit and be in tune to the Spirit and have such a strong, powerful testimony and passion about unity and Zion and having a relationship with the Savior and all of that. Being able to share that in a way that it's not just speaking, but you're providing an experience. So when people walk away, they feel like, wow, what was that? I want more of that in my life. So stay tuned. I'm really excited about that. If you know people who would be great for this, especially people of diverse churches and denominations, we want to have a wide variety of people there. We want to have a broad audience. So if you know anyone, please refer them to me or give them my contact information or give me theirs and let's connect. All right, last announcement. I've had someone reach out to me and share with me these free classes that she is hosting. They're hosting them in different locations, and she really feels and believes that these are going to be vital to the coming days ahead in the future, and it's really important to be able to know how to do this. The classes are called Unexpected Childbirth Response Learning Circle, and these are circles of women, I believe Relief Society sisters, and she teaches how to deliver a baby. So in those unexpected moments, which I would call an emergency, someone's about to give birth, but there's no hospital, or you're in a situation where you can't get them to a hospital, it's really important to be able to know how to do this. So these are free classes. I just wanted to put in a plug for her. I've got links down below if you want to find out more. It looks like there's an event coming up for the Relief Society Sisters of the Graham Stake in Washington, Saturday, September 28th. And then there's also an event coming up in Vancouver, Canada. So I've got links to all this down below if you want to reach out to her and get in touch with her and maybe schedule something like this in your area. I think it would be something very helpful and important to learn. Okay, now I'm excited to talk about my surprise. I was really hoping I could get this out sooner, but there's just been so much going on lately, and this project has involved so much time, more than I thought it would. So it has taken a little while to get it done, but it's finally finished. So I'm excited to share that with you. So before I tell you what it is, let me just build up the background story. A couple weeks ago, I was cleaning the kitchen. Isn't that how most of my stories start out? Someone reached out to me with a link to this video and said, "This is interesting. I think you might want to watch." So I watched it as I cleaned. The host of this interview is named Jerry Marzinski, and the title of the video is Behind the Dark Thoughts, and there's a part 1 and a part 2. I didn't watch part 2, but I watched most of part 1. As you can see, I realized this after I'd watched it, there's the number 311. And right away I got this feeling that this is something we need to be aware of. This is something that we need to be on top of in this 11th hour. Truly what I'm about to share with you is third day power in this 11th hour. I really believe this is going to be life-changing. So I'm watching this video, and in there, it has my attention because he's interviewing a psychologist, and the psychologist specializes in working with psychosis patients, namely patients who suffer from schizophrenia. Now, that always piques an interest for me because my mom, there are 6 children in her family. She's one of 6 children. 3 of those 6 children have schizophrenia and were diagnosed around the age of 18, 19. I remember, and each of those children each have the different kind of schizophrenia. What we were always taught growing up is there's 3 different kinds, and they each had one of those 3 different kinds. Now, this was so rare that the University of Utah would constantly come out and study our family. I remember countless times of a big white van showing up in front of our home and taking each of us one at a time into the van, hooking us up with all these probes, computer in front of us, and they're running all these tests on us because they wanted to figure out why this had happened to our family. They wanted to learn. So this was common for us growing up, and my mom would always tell us stories about how difficult it was growing up in a family with 3 schizophrenic siblings. It was so difficult. Long story short, one of my uncles, my Uncle Lee, was murdered back in 2001 in Salt Lake City, and this story made headlines. And I think I may have brought it up recently in a video because it's made headlines again this year because they're reopening the case because they feel that they might be able to exonerate the man who was found guilty of his murder. This was a big story, and it touched a lot of people because he was such a nice man. He was a big old teddy bear. He wouldn't harm a fly, and he was violently murdered in the back of a 7-Eleven and robbed of like $15. In fact, I still have the plant. It's kind of big, I don't know if you can see it. I still have the plant from his funeral. So every time I look at this plant that's here in my office, I'm reminded of my Uncle Lee. Then there's my Uncle Vernon. He has a very extreme case of paranoid schizophrenia, and he's been living in a facility his entire adult life. And there were times when he was in between facilities where he would just freak out and turn violent on people, and he would end up in jail. And so they found it was best to always keep him in a facility. And I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, we went to visit him and we brought him presents. And I remember walking in and I was just so happy. And the first thing I said was, hey, how's it going? Right when I said that, he jumped up and turned violent and he wanted to kill me. And it terrified me. And my heart was beating. I was so afraid. The last time we had visited him, he was so friendly and so nice, and this time was completely different. And later, one of the nurses told us there are certain keywords if you say, they actually set him off. And one of those keywords or key phrases is, how's it going? For some reason, that triggers something in his mind, maybe something from his past or childhood, and he turns violent. So you can never say that. Well, we didn't know that. And this uncle, he is very tall. He's a big, big guy. He could do a lot of damage. That's always been hard to see him suffer that way and go through that trial. Then my Aunt Joan, I know I shared in a recent video around Christmas time, I shared it on our family vlog. We found her. She has been missing for years. We didn't know if she was alive or homeless or what had happened to her, but she was living in Salt Lake in a home. And about 10 years ago, she took a bus to Colorado to be near where my grandma was living at the time, and then no one had seen her since. And I had reached out to detectives and sheriffs and police in Denver and in that whole area, and no one could help me. Well, finally, I reached out to my grandma's sister because my grandma is getting older. She lives in a nursing home in Tennessee now, and my aunt reached out to us and said, she really would like to have some peace of mind with Joan. If you could help us find Joan, it would really give her some peace of mind. So I reached out to my grandma's sister who lives in Washington, and she was able to track down my Aunt Joan, who is living in a nursing home in Colorado, and we were able to call her on Christmas, wish her a Merry Christmas, and catch up with her, and that was so wonderful. But she also suffers from schizophrenia. She sees things. She not only hears things, but she sees things. She has a lot of hallucinations, where my Uncle Vernon hears things. He has these voices that tell him to be angry and get violent, and they're very negative. But my Aunt Joan and my Uncle Vernon always would get very negative thoughts, images, and voices in their mind. And as I was talking to my mom, she said that my Uncle Lee was different. He was more friendly, but he still suffered from schizophrenia. And something that they all had in common was in childhood, they had something that set them apart from everybody else. They were picked on, they were bullied, and they were victims. My mom said that my Uncle Lee joined the military and wasn't quite able to finish up his last year, I think. Something happened his last year. My Uncle Vernon went on a mission, and within the first few months, they sent him home because he became very violent with his companions. And then my Aunt Joan, just after high school, stepping into adulthood, being out on your own, triggered that for her. But my mom said that all throughout her childhood, she went to regular school, had friends, but she was always very grumpy. She was always very angry at everyone, angry at the world. That anger fueled those voices. So it sounds like stress and anxiety, which is common when you're going into adulthood and you're transitioning from living at home with your family, having everything taken care of, to now stepping out into the real world, going to college, going on a mission, joining the military, whatever it is. That stress and those anxieties and fears can trigger those voices and bring them on in full force. I'm getting to my point here in a minute, but I asked my mom, I said, from what I learned from this video, people who suffer from schizophrenia often had incidents in their childhood where they were bullied, picked on, abused, or in some way they were different from everyone else, and they always felt separated. They always felt different and ashamed of that. And so when you have this going on all throughout childhood, it definitely weakens your spirit. And when you're weak, you become a target and a victim to the adversary. You'll have to watch the video, but it sounded like if you do have something in your genes, this can definitely trigger it and make you vulnerable to the attacks of the enemy, which then, with everything that comes along with that, brings on the diagnosis of schizophrenia, or in general, other mental health issues. So in the video, the psychologist said, I've been doing this for years, and I have worked with some of the most difficult psychosis patients. And he said something that we were always taught is to never bring up certain things, never ask the patients what the voices were saying, never really pry into that and try to investigate, because that will always set them off. And according to him, he said that they're taught in their training, and it's true, it's what he experienced, that psychologists and the people who prescribe the medications for these schizophrenic patients are enemy number one, next to the family. They're enemy number one. All schizophrenics do not like and do not trust their psychologists, and oftentimes their family. So he was used to experiencing just short visits with his patients, and usually during those appointments, the patients were very on edge, very upset, anxious, and not very kind to him or trusting of him. And so he said over the years, he shared lots of experiences that happened over the years, but there finally came a time when he said, I want to learn more about this. I want to start investigating, because it started to bother him that the facility that he was working in, the hospitals in that area, were not truly investigating it. That there was no valid research backing up their claims, that they were just saying, yep, you have schizophrenia, so here's a medication, you need to be on this. And of course, when they were on the medications, it would numb everything. It would suppress and lessen the voices and the hallucinations, but they were still there. It never cured them. They were still there, and it wasn't always effective, because if you know, schizophrenics never stay on their medications. They don't like to be on them, so they're notorious for refusing to take them or getting off of them and continuing that cycle. He wasn't happy with the way that the medical community was dealing with this. He wasn't happy with the way the psychology community was dealing with this, and so he started to go against the rules. He started breaking all the rules that he was taught, all the rules that he was asked to follow at the place where he worked, and he started digging. He started asking questions. He ended up finding out that these voices that all of his patients were hearing were saying the exact same things. They were saying all the same things, but no one had ever investigated this. So this was new. No one knew this. And he thought, well, that's interesting. They all are different. They come from different families, different locations. They don't know each other, but these voices are telling them all to do the exact same things. That is very interesting. And I'm feeling it right now. I'm feeling the truth bumps, you guys. And so then he started to investigate each of their stories. And I'll just give you, you'll really have to watch the video, but I'll just share some of the things with you. He said what he was finding out is most of the time it was the voices that got a lot of these patients into drugs. Oftentimes, schizophrenics, if they're not in a facility, they'll quickly become homeless. They'll become homeless and addicted to drugs. And he said that the one thing that the voices were telling all of them, the voices that were pushing them to use drugs, was telling them never take marijuana, never smoke marijuana, stay away from marijuana. And as he started to investigate that, he realized, well, what does marijuana do? It calms you and relaxes you. And these voices were telling them to go after methamphetamine drugs, because what do those drugs do? Well, the complete opposite of marijuana. They get you on edge, you're full of energy, you're anxious, and these voices wanted these victims to be anxious and on edge and have anxiety. That opened up more of a doorway for these voices to afflict these victims. Apparently, when the victims are calm and relaxed, they're more likely to ignore the voices. The voices don't have as much effect or power over them. So he after talking to a lot of his patients who were addicted to drugs, he would say, well, when you got out of jail or when you got out of rehab, how is it that you were able to jump so quickly back into the drug world? How did you know where to go, where to find drugs, what to do? And the patients would all say, well, the voices in my head knew where the drugs were. They would tell me, on this day, at this time, go to this location, look for this person. They'll be selling exactly what it is you need to take. And the voices were so loud, so relentless. So they would always give in and go. And sure enough, in that location, on that day, there would be that person with that drug. So they said, it was so easy always to be able to find drugs. So something else he discovered was that he said, you know, we always just are taught to refer to it as voices. So the rest of society, we assume that they're actually hearing audible external voices, but that's not true. When you ask a schizophrenic what those voices are like, they just describe it as a really loud thought in their mind, a thought that dominates and takes over all other thoughts, and they call it a voice. And so when we hear people talking about voices, well, we assume, oh, they must be crazy. They're hearing external voices. But no, they're just hearing really loud thoughts. Well, that's no different than you and I. That's no different than anyone. Don't we often hear thoughts on a daily basis? Some thoughts are louder than others. Some thoughts more persistent and nagging than others. Positive thoughts and negative thoughts telling us to do negative things. So the psychologist started tying all of this in and saying, I started to realize that any of us could be diagnosed with schizophrenia, depending on how vulnerable we become to these voices. And the people who become the victims are the people who are weak, who have had experiences throughout their life, especially in their childhood, that have really weakened their spirit and allowed them to be dominated by these thoughts or voices. And so as he started to learn that, he started to think, well, this medication really isn't being effective. And what he was learning is that the voices were the ones telling the patients to stop taking the medication. So the voices were saying to every patient, this medication is poison. It's going to kill you. Don't take it. Don't trust your psychologist. He's the one prescribing this poison that is going to kill you. He is trying to kill you. He is your enemy. And it would get them to hate their families. Don't trust your family. They're the one making you go to the psychologist who is trying to poison you. So the voices were saying the same things to all of his patients. And he thought, that sounds very intelligent. Like we're dealing with an intelligent voice here. Do you see where I'm going with this? And I'm feeling it. This is interesting because this is something I have visited many times on my own over the years. I really had a feeling that what he's getting to with his research and what he concludes with, that's what I've always felt. But I could never say that because I don't have any evidence to back that up other than just a strong feeling. And so, long story short, he finally meets a woman one day who came to the same conclusion that he did. She's also a psychologist, and she said, I finally developed a therapy that cures this, and it works. So she had his attention, and she said, I have taught my patients that they need to face these voices and shoot these voices down. And the more they do this, the more they weaken those voices. The voices only have power over them when they listen to them and they obey them. But when they ignore them and they shoot them down and say, I choose to reject that, that is a lie. That is not true. I do not believe that. It lessens and weakens those voices until eventually they go away. And then the patients are cured of schizophrenia. So she had seen this time and time again with her own patients. So he decided to try this. He shares a story of a certain patient who had an extreme case of schizophrenia, very debilitating. And he said that he began to do this with his patient, and it worked. Eventually, his patient was cured. He no longer heard the voices. He no longer had the thoughts. They were gone. He felt free. This patient was able to have a job and be successful and be able to live on his own and fit into society just like anybody else. So it was a success story. However, months later, he decided to check in again to see how this patient was doing. And it turned out the schizophrenia had come back. So he asked why. He wanted to know why. And the patient said to him, as hard as this sounds, I got lonely. I had burned all my bridges. I had no more family or friends. People become exhausted with friends and family members who suffer from schizophrenia, that they burn bridges and they end up just wanting to stay away and not have anything to do with them. So he said, that was my case. I was so extreme. I had burned all my bridges. I had no friends, no family. I was lonely. All my life, all I had was the voices. The voices were always there for me. The voices always kept me company. For that first month, without having those voices, that silence was scary. I wasn't used to it. I didn't like it. I felt so lonely. I didn't have anyone else to talk to. In fact, I got so lonely one day, I called out for the voices to come back. Just like that, they were back, and they've been back ever since. So that right there taught the psychologist, this is an act of free will. You have the power to invite the voices in and give them power over you. You also have the power to send them away and keep them away. This was very profound. So essentially, he was saying that in order for a cured patient to be successful and stay cured, they need to be surrounded by a support system so they're not lonely. When they're lonely and they feel alone, they relapse. They invite those voices back because it's all they know. It's what they're familiar with. So I thought that was very interesting. And it's no different than us. We need support groups. We need to be surrounded by people who uplift us and support us and encourage us. But when we don't have that, we always have it from our Savior Jesus Christ. We always have it from our Father in heaven. And I can guarantee you we have it from many family members and ancestors on the other side of the veil who are cheering us along. So if we can focus on that and develop that relationship with the Godhead, with our Savior, we're not going to feel alone. We're not going to become weak and victims and allow those voices to dominate our thoughts and our decisions. We're going to feel empowered through Christ. He also shared an experience of a Native American client who he found out had this ability to see through the veil. He was able to see spirit beings. And he tells a story about one day he was walking past a bar. I believe the psychologist asked him, tell me about your first encounter with the voices. What happened? What was that like? And he said, well, I was walking past a bar one day, and all of a sudden, I started hearing, go into that bar and drink, go into that bar and get a drink, go into that bar and get a drink. And he said, I don't drink. I had no desire to drink. This was really strange. And he just kept hearing, go into that bar and drink, go into that bar and drink. Well, finally, it was so loud, he gave in. And he talks about something along the lines of I hope I get the story right, but when he went into the bar and he took that drink, all of a sudden he saw all of these spirits pile on top of him, trying to fight to get into his body to be able to enjoy that drink. And there were so many that they piled all the way up to the sky. They all pounced on him. Since that day, he was plagued by those spirits and those voices. And he was one of his most extreme cases. He was very violent, always in and out of jail, severe addictions, all starting from that day when he gave into those voices and he took a drink that he didn't even feel he wanted. He felt it was coming from someone else. In my novel, The Realm, I talk about a scenario where one of the characters is able to see something like this happening with earthbound spirits and demonic entities trying to enter in someone's body just to fulfill their addictions or carry out their agenda or to carry out evil. It's something that I've always believed. I know there's a lot of people who have had near-death experiences. Let me just show you my library up there of all of my books. I have a lot of near-death experience books. That's pretty much all I own in my library. And so many of people have talked about seeing that as well. Earthbound spirits and demonic entities trying to take possession of physical bodies to carry out their will. So from what I learned from this video, which confirms what I've always believed, and I've talked about this in past videos and books, is that there's two groups of voices at play here. There are the voices of the disembodied spirits, who are the people who are bound to the earth by addictions. They're bound here because they're attached to temporal things, usually addictions, whether they're sex addictions, drug addictions, whatever it may be. They don't want to move on. They don't want to go to the light because they're bound here to those addictions. They're literally in bondage. So what they do is they don't have a body. So in order to get that fix, that high, they have to possess the body of someone else. So they're the ones going around telling people, drink this, go get those drugs, go do this, go do that. Because they want that high, they want to experience that. And when you obey and you partake, you open up a doorway for them to come in and take control. And when this happens, the host, the physical body that houses the spirit, will take on all these other spirits and their identities and genders, creating identity confusion and gender confusion. You often hear people that suffer from this will say, I've always felt that I have been trapped in the wrong body. I've always felt that I belonged in another body, in someone else's body. I'm in the wrong body. Well, the dominant spirit and dominant personality will take on the main identity of the individual. I myself have seen people in my own life who started to entertain and play around with these thoughts and ideas of switching over to another gender and experimenting. Suddenly, they have a drastic change and everything about them is different. Their mannerisms become drastically different. Their face expressions become drastically different. And before you know it, it feels like a completely different person than the person you knew before. People who suffer from multiple personalities, it's often discovered that in their childhood, they had major trauma and major abuse take place. And the multiple personalities came on as a coping mechanism to help them deal with parts of their life that weren't so pleasant, and to help strengthen them where they are weak so they don't experience becoming a victim again. For example, we'll call someone Rachel, and we'll say that Rachel experienced extreme trauma and abuse in her childhood. And so as she got older, when she was confronted with similar issues that pinpointed her weaknesses and insecurities, well, suddenly another personality would emerge and dominate and take over and deal with that for her so that she didn't have to deal with it. And it's very interesting that these personalities have names. They are individuals with names and personalities. They are intelligent. I've heard of many celebrities that have these, and they call them their alter egos. They help them perform much better than when they have anxiety and fear. It's as if these personalities are spirit beings who once had a body and now are searching for a host to attach to so they can carry on as though they had a body. And the only people they're able to attach to are people who are vulnerable and weak. Now, what creates weakness and vulnerability, which opens up the door? Well, abuse, trauma, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, and sin. These strong, powerful feelings and emotions can come on at any time in your life, from early childhood, teenage years, and sometimes beginning in adulthood. And this psychologist said that with schizophrenia, it's often diagnosed around age 18 or 19 is because that's when teenagers step into adulthood. Whether they're transitioning into going off to college, serving a mission, joining the military, moving out on their own, these are all big milestones and life-changing events that trigger anxiety, depression, fear, and stress. Many of the powerful thoughts, feelings, and emotions that bring on schizophrenia and other mental health issues. So yes, what I'm saying here is that these loud voices and thoughts in our minds that are telling us to think a certain way and behave a certain way that's going to change our identity or get us into trouble with the law or create bondage and cause addictions, create the desire to harm ourselves or to harm someone else. These are not imaginary voices or imaginary beings. No, they are very real. What this is possession. It is another entity trying to take possession of your body and control your mind to carry out its will. So once these spirits get working on you and they get you to participate in sin and they're able to take possession, then you have another group of spirits. These are the demonic beings. These are the ones that are getting into you and telling you to do violent things. So now they're piling on you and they're the ones saying, this person hates you, this person's trying to kill you, don't trust that person, stay away from everyone, you're worthless, you're a terrible person, no one likes you, everyone's judging you, you're crazy. And these are the ones telling you those thoughts. And then eventually what he said, the one thing they all had in common was eventually these clients, these patients, get to a point where they're so overwhelmed, feeling so hopeless, suddenly the voices start saying, well, it's time to end it. You need to kill yourself. Just go kill yourself. No one will miss you. No one cares about you. You don't have anyone anyways in your life. You should go kill yourself. And so that would be the demonic beings telling you to do that. So you have these two groups at play here, both working to gain control over you. That's what he noticed with his patients, but that's no different than any one of us. We are dealing all the time with demonic beings and earthbound spirits that we can't see that are constantly trying to influence our choices, our decisions, our thoughts, and our behaviors. And so that's where this comes into play. That's where my surprise comes into play. As I watched that video, it really affected me. Again, I saw the number 311 and I felt this is so important because, as he said in the video, this is no longer about schizophrenic patients or psychotic patients. This is about everyone. This is about you and I. What I learned is profound for everyone. And you guys, the video that I filmed, that I showed as footage in the background as I was talking about celebrities and their alter egos, that video happened to be 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Another reminder to pay attention. All right, I just want to pause for a moment and remind everyone of the story in Mark chapter 5 of a man who everybody in the nearby town considers crazy and dangerous. And in verse 2 it says, "And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit." So this man was living in a cemetery. He was living among the tombstones. And it says, "Who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains." So he was so powerful. He was controlled by such powerful spirits that nobody could even tie him up. They couldn't even catch him and keep him bound. And in Luke chapter 8, verse 27, it says that there met him out of the city a certain man which had devils long time. So he had them for a long time. And he ware no clothes, so he was naked. Neither abode in any house, so he was homeless, but he lived among the tombs. And when he sees Jesus coming, he cries out to him and recognizes who he is immediately and begs him, "Please don't cast us out, don't torment us." And Jesus recognizes exactly what's going on, and he calls him out. And he says, "What is thy name?" And the man replies, "Legion." And it says, because there were many devils inside of him. Many. And we all know what happens. They beg Jesus to let them enter the bodies of some nearby pigs. There's a herd of swine. So Jesus allows it. They enter into the bodies of the pigs, and then they run violently off a cliff, jump into the sea, and the pigs are drowned. and this man is healed. And the people that witness it run back to the city, into the country, and tell everyone what they witnessed. Well, the townspeople want to find out for themselves, so they rush over to where Jesus is. And it says here in verse 35, they see the man whom the devils were departed sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Yes, he was healed. He was healed by Jesus. And you guys, we have that same healing power on the earth today. The power of the Lord can heal anyone who is not in their right mind. So right away I had this feeling, I want to start fighting my own thoughts that I hear that are negative. We all hear negative thoughts. We don't necessarily call them voices, but it's no different than what psychosis patients are dealing with. Maybe those of us who aren't as weak are able to push them aside and ignore them, but they're there. You know, I've shared in past videos about what Kirk Duncan teaches, how he talks about thoughts and how you know when they're thoughts from the adversary and when they're your own thoughts. When they're your own thoughts, you'll hear yourself saying, I, and that's you talking. But when you hear your thoughts saying you, and it's more accusing, finger pointing, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. You are this, you are that, you are not this, you are not that. That's somebody else. And so he was able to pinpoint that early on and fight his own depression, fight off his own demons that he was dealing with, which were very serious because he was dealing with depression and suicide. So I got thinking, I'm going to go out today, I'm going to go on a walk with my son, and I'm going to listen to positive affirmations. It's something I'm really big on as the happy lady. It's something I've talked about quite often in past videos and in my books. And I thought that's what I want to do today. So we went on a walk. It was a beautiful day, fresh air, sunshine, birds chirping, and I put on those positive affirmations with music. Okay, it was only 10 minutes long and it was so powerful. Right away, it just elevated me. It did something to me. And within that 10-minute period, I was a completely different person, which positively, profoundly affected the rest of my day. I was happy with my kids. I was a better mother, a better wife. I went out and served. I just felt so happy. And it carried into my weekend. Mother's Day, I was the happiest I've ever been in years. And I couldn't figure out where this was coming from. I felt so happy. Every thought coming into my mind was constantly positive. There were no critical thoughts, no judgmental thoughts. It was all good, and it just kept getting better and better and better. And the Lord started teaching me something about this. He said, this is something everyone needs to be doing. What you did was you stood up against the negative thoughts. You called them out for what they were. You rejected them, and you invited only positive seeds inside of you, and they've been blooming ever since. And so I got to thinking, and I thought, you know, there's a lot of videos out there with affirmations, but most of them are so general. You are pretty, you are beautiful, you are successful, right? But it's difficult to find videos that focus on gospel truths and scriptures and focus on Christ. It's really difficult to find those. So I thought, you know, I'm going to make some for me. I'm going to go ahead and make my own. They'll be tailored just for me, things that I love to say that I know work. And I'm going to put those with music, and I'm going to listen to those on my walk every day. Well, as I got preparing these, all of a sudden the Spirit came to me and said, you know what? You're not just going to make these for yourself. You're going to make these for everyone, because everyone needs this. And so right away, it just started coming into my mind, the different topics for each video and the different truths that would be spoken of in each of those videos. And right away it was coming. So I started writing it all down, and I'm going to share with you. It's really interesting. There ended up being 8 topics, 8 videos. And so I'll read them in order. Physical health, self-esteem, identity, and purpose, positive perspective, faith and hope, spiritual warfare, protection and security, abundant blessings, creation and gratitude, forgiveness, love, healing, and peace, and relationships, communication, and trust. 8 right there. And after the 8th one, I was told it's complete. That's all you need to do. And as I've been pondering on that number 8, I was reminded of what 8 represents, which is a number we talk about a lot, especially last year in 2018. So just to remind you, in the Bible, 8 is a number of new beginnings. It stands for new order, new creation, and being born again. It also symbolizes the resurrection and regeneration. Now, when you think about a week has 7 days. When you count those 7 days and then you get to number 8 is actually the first day of the new week. So there's 7 days in a week. After 7, we start all over. So if you're counting days of the month and you get to 8, well, that's a new week. So when you think about resurrection, new creation, I think about transformation. And I got thinking that is what these 8 videos are going to do. They are going to transform people because what they're filled with is absolute truths. And this is a tool. It really is a weapon. When you are hearing over and over truths in your mind, those truths are going to dominate the lies that are competing for your mind. And as those truths constantly play over and over in your mind, they become powerful and they start to press down the lies, push them away, smash them until they're gone. You reject them fully. And what I love about these videos is the way I was told to put them together. They're more than just affirmations. We already have a lot of those out there. We don't need more affirmations. So this is something more. This is feelings. These aren't just thoughts, but they're feelings. So it's teaching your mind and body to take a thought, a positive thought, something that's true, and connect it with a powerful, positive feeling, because it's those feelings and emotions that send out those signals that create change in our lives. So these are powerful. And there's a lot of scriptural truths that you'll recognize from the scriptures. A lot of it is about reinforcing our identity in Christ and who we are and reinforcing that in our mind. So these are great. I would encourage you to have everyone in your family listen to them. And something I realized is, don't just pick 1 or 2 that are your weaknesses that you'd really like to focus on, but go through all 8 of them because they actually all work together. I got thinking about it and I thought, well, physical health, right? Promoting your physical health. A lot of times when you're sick, it's because you also have emotional healing that you need to work on. So then you'd want to go down to the one that's forgiveness, love, healing, and peace. And as you do that, it's going to affect your physical health. But also faith and hope. When you're dealing with illness, you need to have faith and hope. So listening to faith and hope is going to build that and help you even further. Also, spiritual warfare, right? A lot of times when we're dealing with sickness and disease and suffering, afflictions, we're being tormented by the enemy. So spiritual warfare definitely should be used hand in hand with all these other videos. It's just a domino effect. Every one of these videos complements the others. So what I recommend, they're very short. They're only about 8 to 10 minutes long each, and that's for a reason. So your mind only needs about 10 minutes or so of these positive truths being reinforced. For me, I like to listen to them twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. So I want to start my day on the right foot with truth, get rid of those lies. And then after all my experiences in the day, I want to end the day with positive truths. I want to go to bed with those truths playing over and over in my mind while I sleep. So I like to listen to these when I'm out on a walk, when I'm cleaning. You can even listen to them while you take a nap. It's totally okay if you fall asleep because it's still playing in your subconscious mind. So as the adversary hears these truths being played into your mind, they weaken his power over you. They weaken his influence over you. And so this is awesome. I'm just so excited. I have had the most amazing week from just doing this, from not only writing these as they've been coming into my mind, but saying them and listening to them. It's just been awesome. And I've really experienced some incredible transformation in my own personal life. So I'm going to have my kids listen to them, my husband listen to them, my mom, my siblings, my entire family. And I wanted to share that with you as well. But another thing that came to my mind was, how often do we go on social media and there's always that person every day who makes that post that starts out with, "Help!" with lots of exclamation points. "Help! I'm experiencing a crisis. I don't know what to do. I need advice. I need prayers. Prayers, please, prayers. I am panicking. I am anxious. I'm super depressed. Whatever it is, help. I need help. Pray for me," right? And a lot of times we don't know what to do, so we just say, "Okay, I'll pray for you." But what if we could give something to that person that would be very helpful for them in that moment? So I thought about this playlist. this is a great tool to share with other people. If you come across these posts in social media, or you have friends and family who come to you out of the blue one day and they're just saying, help, I am experiencing chaos right now. I am in distress. I need something. I don't know what to do. You can give them this and explain to them real quick what it is. And they can go listen to these meditations and have those thoughts, those strong thoughts that are lies, that are causing them stress and anxiety, which are all fear-based. So it's powerful thoughts of fear that are going into their mind. Fear of the unknown, fear of what if. I have no control over this. Help, 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 right? It's going to do the opposite. It's going to kick out all of those thoughts, clear their mind, and fill it with truth so that they can have a clear mind and have peace and be able to feel like they're in control of their own emotions and feelings. And when you have control over your own emotions and feelings, over your own thoughts, you feel empowered. You're able to make better decisions. You're able to be open to receive love, to give love. I mean, it is life-changing. So the name of these videos, it came into my mind, Empowered Through Christ Meditation Series. So there's 8 videos in this series, but they're not meant to be watched, they're meant to be listened to. I've got a link down below if you want to start listening to those today. I'm so excited. I'd love to hear back from you about how they influence your life. So feel free to share your experiences. Okay, so now we're going to move on and talk about headlines and current events. First of all, I just want to talk to you guys about, I've been having a lot of dreams lately about trains, and it's had some very profound meanings for me personally. I'm not going to get into that, but my dreams lately have really been a true reflection of what's been going on inside of my mind. And these dreams have really been teaching me a lot. So I'm really grateful for these dreams, but just wanted to put it out there that it's interesting. Prior to the Golden Spike celebration, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, I was having these train dreams. So they're all finally coming together and are teaching me quite a bit. So I'm really grateful for that. Are you guys having dreams too right now? Pay attention to your dreams because they truly are answers. They have meaning. Okay, after making my last video, there was a period of an entire week where we just felt like we were overwhelmed with butterflies. I don't know if you guys experience this too where you live, but we have butterflies everywhere. Not only in our yard, but every park we went to, we'd go on walks. Butterflies everywhere, just hitting the car, covering the trees, landing on us. People sharing pictures on Facebook of butterflies landing on their children. Just butterflies everywhere. I've never seen so many butterflies. So as I got thinking about it, I wrote that down in my notes and I thought, well, what do butterflies symbolize? Well, we know they symbolize transformation. So there again, it's like the Lord was leading me into these videos, into this meditation series. It's time for transformation. It is time for my people, for my children, to be transformed in me. That's what I've been hearing and feeling lately. Now, the reason we need to be transformed is so we can have that mighty change of heart, so our hearts are not waxing cold, right? So we can unite, bring about that unity and have that Zion, that one heart, one mind, and one purpose, which is crucial. It's required for the return of the Lord. So this is really important right now. So a little over a week ago, I got in the car to take my son to school, and all of a sudden my car battery was again dead. And I couldn't figure out why. Nothing had been draining it. It had been working all week. We'd even come back from some of our other trips, having not used that car the entire week, and it worked just fine. But over the last couple weeks, it needed to be jumped, but other than that, it had been fine. And then all of a sudden, this one morning, we come out, and I could barely get it to start. So I took it into AutoZone. They tested the battery and said, yep, this is a bad battery. It's finally dead. You just need to get a new one. So got the new battery, everything was working out. The clock still doesn't work in my car. It still shows 0 time when I go to set it. There are no numbers. Time is out, time is up. So I keep getting that message, time is up, time is up, time is up. To me, as I've been pondering on that car battery, it is very symbolic. Getting rid of the old and bringing in the new. Bringing in the new, restoring that power. And what's interesting is the receipt that I got from AutoZone after I purchased the battery, and I got this awesome discount, but here it is. There it is. 11119. The minute I saw that, I heard in my mind, we've talked about the number 111, and it means unity. The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, how they're one. They're one in purpose, one in heart, one in mind. We need to be just like them. In this year, 2019, there's the 1-9 for 2019. This year is the year we need to be one. We need to be one with the Lord. We need to have that unity with the body of Christ. It is so important. So that car battery, bringing in something new, a new power, restoring power to the car, to the vehicle, right, to the body, in the year 2019. I felt it from head to toe, and I love it when the Lord speaks to me that way, so creatively through these little signs that are always so big. Now, there have been a lot of unity events happening this year, and we've talked about a lot of them in this video, but one I want to bring up right now is the Golden Spike celebration of 150 years. And I went out with my kids. I'd been feeling all year long, ever since I found out about it last year. This is something you need to go to. Mark it on your calendar. Well, we barely were able to make it that day. My son had an Eagle project that morning, but we went out in the afternoon, and I found out later that President Nelson had been there prior. And here's a news article that shares more about that story. But what stood out to me is what he said. Now, what's interesting is, if you'll remember at the beginning of this year, I talked about that parade. Was it the Rose Parade? It was a parade in January in California. It was a big parade. It was being televised. And all of a sudden, there was a float of the Golden Spike event, because this is the 150-year anniversary, and that float crashed down. It broke down and was blocking the parade. And it was such a big deal. This is something that never happens. People were upset. The parade ended early. People went home. The people in charge of that float were fined big fines. But it stood out to me because there was smoke coming out of it, and it was symbolizing one, coming together, bringing two sides of the country together. And when it broke down, I took that as a sign of, we don't have that unity right now. The adversary is working to break us down, to separate us. I mean, right now, politically, you have the two sides that are completely clashing more than ever before. It's crazy. And so you feel this constant division. And that symbolism of that unity breaking down was powerful. And I talked about that at the beginning of the year. I said, we're going to see more of that this year. But at the same time, look at what God is doing. He's working against the adversary. The adversary is always trying to mimic what the Lord is doing, but for his plans and his purposes. He's always trying to interfere with God's plan. So the Lord is trying to bring everyone together and unify, and the adversary is doing the opposite. So if you look at what the Lord is doing, he truly is bringing us all together. He is uniting and gathering in the body of Christ. So this was on his Facebook page. Here's what our prophet said. I was pleased to be a part of a ceremony today that celebrated the 150th anniversary of the joining together of two railroad lines, connecting people unlike ever before. The theme of the event was as one. Isn't that pretty interesting? That was the theme of the celebration. The railroad was built by people from diverse backgrounds, including immigrants from many countries, freed slaves, and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. These hardy laborers achieved a oneness that can guide us as a people to move forward to fulfill God's plan for all of his children. Are you feeling it? I believe that we are all coming together as one. This coming together truly represents all that is good in the world. I pray each of us can learn from the example of these laborers and work toward building peace and fostering understanding so that we may all be as one. I love that. And this is a theme he talks about often. He really does. He talks about the importance of being one and coming together. And I definitely felt that spirit when I was there as I looked around at all these people, because it was crowded. Everybody was so happy. Everybody was positive and smiling and enjoying the celebration as they did the reenactment. It was so amazing. It was just a good feeling and a good vibe throughout that entire event. So I just wanted to share that. Now, the Deseret News did a story on this, and in the article that I read, it said, the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, a wonder of the world, said Kui Tianka, the Chinese ambassador to the United States, united a nation still healing from the Civil War. It's a telling example of how the Chinese and Americans can join together to get things done, Tianka said. Now, how is that statement for irony with what's going on right now in world headlines between China and Russia and the trade wars. Yes, this is a war. We are at war. Now, this same article also quotes President Nelson as saying, "This celebration today also reminds us to be true to our vision for the future. Lincoln prayed that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. So we pray today that in John Meekham's words, the soul of America will prevail." These hardy laborers achieved a oneness that can guide us as a people to move forward to fulfill God's plan for this nation, the world, and all of His children. Okay, since the last video message, there was the announcement from Church News that people can now be married civilly outside of the temple, and later, even that same day, receive a temple sealing in the temple. What's awesome about this would have been great back when I was married, because when I was married, my husband's family, they're from Germany. None of them are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so none of them were able to see us get married. They had flown all that way, paid all that money to come just to stand outside the temple and wait for us to come out, and it was done. We were already married, we were already sealed. I remember we had asked the bishop if we could have a ring ceremony or something just to commemorate our unity and our marriage, just so they could be a part of something. And he told us, no, absolutely not. So there was nothing for them to see and experience. It was really kind of heart-wrenching. I felt bad for them. And also my family at the time, no one was worthy except for my brother to see us get married in the temple. So we had all of my family and all of my relatives and all of his family all standing outside the temple. And then we were in there with just my brother watching and a couple of strangers from my mom's ward who came. But the people we wanted to be surrounded by, the people that we wanted there on that special day, all of our loved ones, the people that are closest to us, were outside, couldn't be a part of it, couldn't be a part of that celebration. And that was difficult. So I can see how that would bring about more unity. That's going to promote more positive feelings towards the church where marriage is concerned. People being able now to walk their daughter down the aisle, have a civil ceremony, but then also be able to go later that day even and have the temple sealing. So this is amazing. I wished it would have been this way when I was married. But it's interesting that it lined up in such a timely manner preceding the Equality Act that's being voted on today. Today is Friday. I'm filming this video Friday, the day that they're supposed to vote on the Equality Act, which is another headline in the news we're going to talk about. So right around the time as this news broke about the Equality Act that's being voted on today, I get this email from a research company asking to see if I qualify for a research study. So I click on it and I start going through the questions, and the very first thing it asks me right here, please indicate your gender identity. Male, female, trans woman, trans man, non-binary, other. I'm not used to seeing that. On all the paperwork I'm used to filling out, it just says male, female, and sometimes other. So there it is, I'm already seeing this happen. It's crazy how much society is already changing with this. In fact, there's a video that I came across the other day. I've got a link to it down below, and it's very interesting. It's a lesbian woman talking about how she feels the Equality Act is very unfair. And because of her side of the story, she says she's politically homeless. She says that nobody wants her, everyone's mad at her, and she's experiencing all kinds of persecution because she is someone from the LGBTQ community, but she's not supporting the Equality Act, and she explains why. And her story is very compelling, so I have a link to that down below. So the day that I was pondering all of this, I was pondering this Equality Act and what was happening with America. I prayed and I asked the Lord, do you have a message for me about this? And this is the scripture he took me to. He took me to Alma 43. And right there, it was already highlighted in yellow, so I knew, well, that's the scripture. And here's what it says. It's talking about the Nephites, and it says in verse 9, "And now the design of the Nephites was to support their lands and their houses and their wives and their children, that they might preserve them from the hands of their enemies. And also," here's where it's highlighted in yellow, "that they might preserve their rights and their privileges, yea, and also their liberty, that they might worship God according to their desires. For they knew that if they should fall into the hands of the Lamanites, the enemy, that whosoever should worship God in spirit and in truth, the true and the living God, the Lamanites would destroy. And we know that the Book of Mormon was written for our day. It was written for us. It's a history from over 2,000 years ago that was written for what we'd be experiencing today on this same land. Here again, we're seeing a repeat of this. We're seeing a group of people coming in and trying to take away those rights, those religious freedoms, and trying to take away our right to worship God. They are trying to destroy us. So it's no wonder that President Nelson had all the sisters of the church, all the women, read the Book of Mormon at the end of the year last year, because it's a great way to prepare us for history sort of repeating itself. And we can look at the Book of Mormon as a handbook and see what God was doing back then and compare it to exactly what he's doing today. We can see how all this plays out if we obey the Lord and if we stick true to the faith. So I absolutely loved that. So I have some links down below if you want to learn more about all of this. But the Equality Act is very dangerous. And I have confidence that President Trump is going to shoot it down. So it's never going to make it into fruition. But still, it's there. It's being talked about. It's being voted on. The Democratic Party is supporting it. There are a few Republicans that are also supporting it. And this is something that is very dangerous, not only to our constitutional rights, but to churches. Not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like the media is putting a focus on our church for some reason, but it's affecting all churches. And I've seen some really good interviews with different religious leaders who are talking about what this means, what this act will mean. If it's ever put in place, it's going to mean the end of our religious freedoms. And they talked about different scenarios. There's so many different scenarios. But for example, if you have girls' camp or boys' camp, they could say, well, to keep it equal, let the girls come and sleep in the tents with the boys. They should be able to sleep in the same tents. Or if you have an overnight sports event with some churches, there's a lot of religion and education that goes together. There's a lot of religious schools. And at those schools, they have sporting events and activities where they travel. And they're going to say, well, for these overnight events or these youth conferences, the boys and the girls should be able to sleep in the same hotel room. It's got to be equal. You're breaking this law if you don't allow that. So it's going to support and encourage things that go against our morals, our values, and our beliefs. And if we break those laws, we pay the price, right? So this is very dangerous. And at the same time, if it's approved, it's going to create a lot of lawsuits because there's going to be a lot of people who aren't willing to cave into it and obey these laws. So there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be madness. But even with bathrooms, they're going to say, okay, churches and religious schools all need to now have gender-neutral bathrooms. No more men's and women's bathrooms only. And so it just crosses so many areas. It's unbelievable. There's a lot more to it than that. But I want to share with you the headline, the news article that came out in our local news here. I want to share with you what the church said about it. Now, this article by MormonNewsroom.org is titled, Church Expresses Support for Fairness for All Approach. So you can see it's got a positive spin on this. They're using the word support and emphasizing that we're being supportive. Now listen to the article. It says, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is deeply concerned that the ongoing conflicts between religious liberty and LGBT rights are poisoning our civil discourse, eroding the free exercise of religion and preventing diverse Americans of goodwill from living together in respect and peace. Lawmakers across the nation, including members of Congress, are working to enact or strengthen laws that ensure LGBT persons fair access to important rights, such as non-discrimination in areas like housing, employment, and appropriate public accommodations. So they're saying this is reasonable. People should have these rights, no matter who you are. You should have these basic rights for housing and employment. There should be no discrimination. That's something we can support. That is fair. The church is on record favoring reasonable measures that secure such rights. So we've always been vocal about that. At the same time, we urgently need laws that protect the rights of individuals and faith communities to freely gather, speak out publicly, serve faithfully, and live openly according to their religious beliefs without discrimination or retaliation, even when those beliefs may be unpopular. And we're experiencing that right now with all this censorship. There's a lot of stories, Fox News reports on it the most, but a lot of stories about so many of us who, because what we support and what we promote is unpopular by the rest of the world, and it's unpopular by many in our country, that we experience discrimination, retaliation, and our voices being quieted. So the church is saying, look, we have gone above and beyond to be supportive of these basic fairness rights. We have been very vocal about supporting that and being on board with that and helping you all have these rights. But who's helping us out? Who's got our back? Who's in our corner? Who's fighting to protect our rights? No one. So it goes on. This includes the right of religious organizations and religious schools to establish faith-based employment and admission standards and to preserve the religious nature of their activities and properties. Again, it makes sense if you're a Catholic organization or a Catholic school, you're going to want to hire Catholics. It just makes sense. It's just how it is. And it wouldn't make sense for a Catholic school to hire a Muslim teacher and then teach Catholic doctrines and principles. It just doesn't make sense. But it would also require the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to hire Muslims, Buddhists, people of other religions, or even atheists to carry out the work and functions of the church. In order to work effectively for a religious organization, you have to be on board with what they believe and what they support and what they teach. You have to be a part of that. For the most part, I'm pretty sure employment with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you have to be a member. And for a lot of positions, you often have to have a temple recommend. I know it's that way in the filming department when they're filming videos and doing photo shoots and things like that. I'll get emails for that, and it will always say in there you need to have a temple recommend, a recommendation from your bishop. So this would get rid of all of that. This could be anybody. You would have to give them an opportunity. You'd have to hire them to be in church videos teaching church principles, but maybe they're people who don't live those laws and practice those doctrines or believe them, but that's who you have to use in your video. It just doesn't make any sense. This does not represent a change or shift in church doctrine regarding marriage or chastity. It does represent a desire to bring people together, to protect the rights of all, and to encourage mutually respectful dialogue and outcomes in this highly polarized national debate. So even the church is recognizing this is huge. This is highly polarized. You're either extremely one side or extremely the other. There is no gray on this. And it is quite the national debate. It's causing a lot of tension and more division. But we're not focusing on the division. Conflicts between rights are common and nothing new. When conflicts arise between religious freedom and LGBT rights, the church advocates a balanced fairness for all approach that protects the most important rights for everyone while seeking reasonable, respectful compromises in areas of conflict. The church affirms this as the best way to overcome sharp divisions over these issues. The church supported the 2015 Fairness for All legislation in the Utah legislature that successfully protected both religious freedom and LGBT rights in employment and housing, and that has helped facilitate greater understanding and respect. The Equality Act now before Congress is not balanced and does not meet the standard of fairness for all. While providing extremely broad protections for LGBT rights, the Equality Act provides no protections, zero, for religious freedom. Very imbalanced. It would instead repeal long-standing religious rights under the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, threaten religious employment standards, devastate religious education, defund numerous religious charities, and impose secular standards, that's big right there, on religious activities and properties. The church joins other religious organizations that also strongly oppose the Equality Act as unbalanced, fundamentally unfair, and a path to further conflict, further division in our country. The church calls upon members of Congress to pass legislation that vigorously protects religious freedom while also protecting basic civil rights for LGBT persons. It is time for wise policymakers to end this destructive conflict and protect the rights of all Americans. Now, I will say this, if we had a Democrat president right now, we might be in trouble. I'm very confident that President Trump is going to shoot this down. And so I'm not worried, but I will say this is not going away. This is something that's going to continually be pushed. Maybe it will change, it will be called something else, but they're going to keep pushing this. This is where they want to see our country go, and they're not going to stop. So the coming elections are very important for the future of our nation and our very freedoms that we now enjoy. So I think the church did a very good job laying this out and explaining what's really going on here. And that title is so deceiving. You hear Equality Act, and then you see a headline that says church opposes or church is against, then you hear in your mind, well, the church is against equality. The church is against fairness. And it's more reason to hate the church, to hate religion, and to hate churches. It's more reason to join the other side. But that's not at all what this is. The church is calling it out for what it is. This is very unfair. It's funny that it's called the Equality Act because there's nothing equal about it. So don't let that deceive you. But what's interesting is that same day, these are the headlines that mainstream media was posting. Look at the contrast of the title of these headlines versus the church newsroom headline that used the word support. LDS Church comes out against Equality Act. Mormon Church opposes federal LGBTQ. And it's funny that the rest of the world calls it LGBTQ, but the church refers to it just as LGBT. Here again, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints opposing. So you see the word oppose, against. These are all negative. And people in the nation who are seeing these national headlines on these left-wing news outlets are just seeing, oh, the church is against. The church is against fairness. The church is against gay people. The church is against equal opportunity. And none of that is true. See how the adversary is spinning this to create more division. So we can expect with this more persecution within the church. We talked about in past videos what's going on over in Europe with persecution against Christian churches over there. Well, it's coming here soon. It's already starting right now, and we're watching it in real time. And sure enough, Sunday morning, it was reported in the Deseret News that vandals attacked the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a meeting house in Provo, and the vandals spray painted hateful religious and political speech all over the property. But I don't believe it's a coincidence that the church announced the change with civil marriage. This could mean that bishops and stake presidents could get in trouble for refusing to marry gay couples in their churches, to have civil ceremonies of gay couples, that they would need to condone that, be a part of it, help carry it out, or they could have lawsuits on their hands. It's interesting how the church is seeing this coming and they're already preparing for those changes, and we saw that with the change announced about civil marriages now allowed outside of the church and still being able to be approved for a temple ceiling. They're trying to keep that separate. I have heard some say that with the progressive laws being passed in California, they could see it very possible that the church would shut down and close temples in California just to protect our practices. And then over the weekend, President Nelson visited Samoa. There was some very, very interesting things that he said to the people there. He said, "I encourage the thousands of men, women, and children in attendance to protect their families from the deception that they will see in the future. The church, when restored in its fullness, will prepare the world for the coming of the Lord. But as members, we will be persecuted for our beliefs. We must fortify ourselves against the attacks of the adversary." And he said to the people of Samoa, "There are difficult days ahead. Please protect your children. Help them to know the Lord and love Him and keep His commandments and be free from the shackles of addiction and bondage." Church members in the Samoan Islands will not be immune from being persecuted, he said, and he warned them to prepare to be persecuted even every day. He told them that they have a solemn duty to prepare for it. He said, please protect your families from the deception you will see in the future. That's why we are all busily engaged in this work. We have to fortify our people against the attacks of the adversary. But then he encouraged them by saying, God will provide them with revelation, strength, and the ability to judge right from wrong. Here we have it, living word from the living prophet. What he shared lines up 100% with today's video message. The Lord absolutely is in charge of all of this. Now, while President Nelson was in Samoa, the leaders of that nation were invited to come hear him speak. The majority of them are not even members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but they still recognize him as a prophet and value his word. I love how people more and more all around the world are recognizing him as a prophet and finding value in what he's saying to the world. So I just want to read you some of these quotes. Here's a quote from one of the cabinet members. It says, President Nelson's message was quite clear that you've got to be strong to be a good person, to be a Christian person and follow the teachings of Christ. This was the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. He went on to say, he's not promising a walk in the park for days to come. It's definitely not going to be easy, but with faith we can actually achieve our walk in the park. Probably not here, but in heaven. Now that was very interesting. All right, so then the Minister for Revenue, Minister of Prisons and Rehabilitation Services, he said this. I believe his name is John Hunt. And he said, if we follow his counsel, I think we will have a peaceful Samoa. What the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is doing in our country is amazing. I'm a Catholic, but I know he's God's prophet, that he brings peace to us. Whatever we do, Catholics and Latter-day Saints, believe in Jesus Christ, in God, in the Holy Spirit. Hearing President Nelson has really filled my heart. I probably am going to use it in my own family to teach my kids to be brave for what's going to happen in the future. It's good that he gave us that warning to help our kids because our kids are our future. All right, and then the Associate Minister of Communications and Information Technology, who happens to be a member of Peace Chapel, which is a Pentecostal church, shared these thoughts. He said, I was very interested to attend when I heard the prophet is coming to Samoa. It was good to hear President Nelson speak on faith and the challenges we are facing now. As Christians, we are to accept that suffering will face us at this time. We have to be strong in the faith to know we are to live by faith and depend on God. This will make us stronger people and make us better citizens of the world, and also for eternity. It helped me as a leader to listen to such wisdom. I learned a lot. Now this leads right into the next story of President Nelson sitting down and meeting with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who happens to be a former member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Well, actually, she still is a member. She just hasn't practiced since her early 20s. And she says this is because of the church's stance on LGBT rights. Now, I get the feeling President Nelson softened her heart as he gave her a Book of Mormon with her name engraved on it. Yes, he is a true bridge builder at heart. Now, while visiting in New Zealand, the church announced that it would donate to the 2 mosques involved in the recent attacks. What a message this is sending to the rest of the world of peace, love, friendship, building bridges, and interfaith unity. Okay, now I just have to share this. Speaking of world leaders, I just want to share with you what I just read about the new leader of Ukraine. What I love about reading this is it sounds like he has a true American spirit at heart. He is about as little government as possible, and as he became leader, he has decided to fire all of Parliament and start over fresh. And he's never been a politician before. He is a lifelong comedian. That's been his profession. And these are two things that he said that made me laugh, and I just wanted to share that with you. He said, "I really do not want my pictures in your offices, for the president is not an icon, an idol, or a portrait. Hang your kids' photos instead, and look at them each time you are making a decision. All my life, I tried to do all that I could so that Ukrainians laughed. That was my mission. Now I will do all that I can so that Ukrainians, at least, do not cry anymore." I loved that, and I just want to keep an eye on him because I feel as though he's destined to do great things in that area, and I just wanted to share. All right, now after the last video, this was something I forgot to put in my video, but I had these images of the constant flooding that's happening in the Midwest. It's happening throughout the country, specifically in the Midwest, but it still continues this week. As you look at weather headlines, that's all we're seeing right now is this flood and lots of rain and even snow in some areas. But again, with the focus on the Midwest, we've talked about in past videos, the Midwest is the heartland. It is the heart of America. So when we see this flooding going on, it's like a cleansing is taking place. It's like the heart of America is being cleansed. And it's interesting because we are seeing changes right now. We're seeing that being manifested with lawmakers, especially in that part of the country and the South. Anyways, you have entire towns and cities underwater. And here's a screenshot of one day's worth of headlines. Severe threat, deadly hours ahead, reported tornadoes, damage, rash of storms, evacuations, levee breach. Here's another one, tropical cyclone, NASA official, an asteroid will hit Earth again. We have to be ready. That stood out to me. That could be for a whole nother video. And then I loved this. Floodwaters rush in and transform desert. There's the word transform. And it reminds me of the scriptures that the desert will blossom like a rose. Speaking about when the Savior returns and the millennium and the transformation that will take place on the earth. And today's video has been all about transformation. So we're seeing these signs all around us. It's like the Lord is saying, get ready, it's coming, be a part of it. Today's weather headlines say multi-day severe onslaught about to begin. This is day one of a dangerous 5-day event. Dangerous problem for Great Lakes getting worse. Summer temperatures are looking frustrating for some. So a multi-day siege of severe weather will flare up in the plains and Midwest into the weekend. Another round of severe weather will then follow in the plains Monday and Tuesday. Tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds are all threats. Flash flooding is also a significant concern. So it shows this severe weather forecast ranging all the way from Texas, coming up through Colorado, going around to Iowa, Chicago, clear out to Washington, D.C. So we see this flow of severe weather. Now it doesn't show Utah in that, but what's interesting is here in Utah, we have cold temperature and rains for the next several days. So there's something going on here. There are flash flood threats. There's another headline that says longest lasting Mississippi River flood since 1927. There's rain outlook all across the country. It's like the entire country is being cleansed, just this rain coming down. There's severe thunderstorms coming. Last night, the thunder and lightning was so loud it terrified my daughter and she came and slept in our room. So we're experiencing some of that here. But it shows a jet stream coming in through California, pivoting out of the Rockies, and then going up into the northeastern part of the United States. I'm just hearing, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. So right around this time, what we also see popping up in the country is bills that are being passed in various states that are opposing abortion, that are against abortion, that are protecting life. And we're seeing more and more of that. And of course, it's making the left very angry. It's making the Democrats and the liberals boycott business in those states. But what I'm seeing is the hearts of men in many places are not waxing cold. There's a change of heart. There's a shift. There's this sort of cleansing, and we're seeing that right now throughout the nation. We're seeing that happen with the weather. So what happens in the physical is always a manifestation of what's happening in the spiritual. And that's what we're seeing take place. There's more and more of these. Here's one headline right here. More heartbeat abortion bills advancing in the Midwest and the South. They use the word heartbeat, right? The Midwest is the heartbeat of America. It is America's heart. We're seeing the Midwest approve these bills that are pro-life. And I believe God is pleased with that. He's cleansing hearts right now. We're experiencing that in the spiritual and in the physical. This is great news. Here's what Doctrine and Covenants section 88 says about cleansing hearts, and this is from the Lord in verse 74. And I give unto you who are the first laborers in this last kingdom a commandment that you assemble yourselves together and organize yourselves and prepare yourselves and sanctify yourselves, yea, purify your hearts and cleanse your hands and your feet before me, that I may make you clean, that I may testify unto your Father and your God and my God that you are clean from the blood of this wicked generation, that I may fulfill this promise, this great and last promise, which I have made unto you when I will. But I've got a link down below if you want to see the states that are trying to get on board with this. I'll just list a bunch of states right here. We've got Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, and Wyoming. And there's a status update on here. It shows on here which bills are already going into effect, which bills have been temporarily blocked by federal court, which ones are awaiting signature of the governor, which ones are being passed, which ones are being struck down by the federal court, and which ones are being struck down by the state court. So you can see a status on that. But when you look at the image, you see that it's the southern states and it's working its way into the Midwest. And when I was thinking about this, and it's funny because Beth from our 11th hour group, we're on the same page with this. And I was thinking about this of how funny it was that years ago, it was the Democrats who supported slavery and they were the slave owners. And then you had the Republican Party that was created around the time of Abraham Lincoln. They were abolitionists for slavery, and we had the Civil War, and the North won, and slavery was abolished, and the Democrats were very upset about this because they owned a lot of those plantations and relied on that slave trade, but the North was all about freedom, right? So we had the northern states focused on freedom, supporting the rights for all, and the southern states who were not supporting the rights for all, and they were primarily Democrats. But now you kind of see that being reversed, and you see in the South, where it used to be Democrat territory, they're now turning conservative. They are now supporting life and supporting rights for all, and most importantly, the right to live, the right to life. And then we see these northern states kind of doing a role reversal. They're turning more blue, and they're pro-abortion, and we're seeing this polarity that the church mentioned, this polarized debate that's dividing the nation. The last time we had a polarized debate this big, it created civil war. So this is a big deal right now. But isn't it funny how the poles have sort of shifted? And when I heard that, I heard in my mind, I was reminded about the magnetic poles of the earth right now that are reversing. You have the North Pole and the South Pole. And scientists are talking about how those poles are reversing. They're switching, and it's affecting travel and navigation. And we've talked about this before in past videos, but I have links to this down below if you want to read more. And Beth said that when she heard about this, what came to her mind was the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And then with the abortion bill that Alabama just passed, they are setting up Supreme Court Roe versus Wade challenge, according to this news article right here. Yes, this is being set up right now, and the Democrats are terrified. So just something to ponder on, just something to think about. All right, and then of course in national and world news, it's funny you guys, I was telling my sister the other day that if I want to get news about what's going on other than politics, I have to go outside of American news. I have to visit websites and news sites from other countries to find out what's happening in my own country. Because all they'll talk about is politics. After a while, that just gets old. And so if I want to know what's going on in the world, I have to go to other places. There was one day I was visiting the BBC News and other news sites, and I saw this pattern. There were stories about what's happening in Israel right now with Iran and that conflict and how that does involve the US. And then you have the situation in North Korea. We seized one of their biggest cargo ships and how there's that conflict happening right now. Things are not looking good there. And then everything that's going on in Venezuela, and the United States is involved with that as well. And let's not forget the trade war with China. You have these big world issues going on that are big enough to cause wars, and we are involved in that. This is big. Even though we don't see a physical war happening with tanks and troops, there is a war going on, especially with what's happening with China right now. I mean, you have China and Russia supporting Venezuela, supporting North Korea, supporting Iran, right? And then you have these tariffs on China that are going to affect our economy as well. But you have these things going on, and it's causing a lot of tension. Definitely pushing buttons. It's definitely working. It's getting people's attention. It's shaking things up. It's doing something, right? It's working. But there are big things going on right now, and you wouldn't always know that if you just watch the mainstream headlines that are just focused on attacks against President Trump. So a story that I happened to come across that just was really interesting. I know there was a video, maybe 5 or 6 videos ago, where I talked about the Tower of Babel and Israel and things going on there. Well, something resurfaced, and I just want to share that with you real quick. I've got some screenshots. So first I'm going to show you this headline: Troubling Warnings, U.S. Deploys Carrier Strike Group to Send Iran Clear and Unmistakable Message. So we can see the tensions are big right now. And then right here we have rockets from Gaza to Israel. But then right here, this is what no one's talking about that really piqued my interest and attention. A Christian group is building a movement that could destabilize Jerusalem's most explosive holy site. So I've got a link down below if you want to read more about this or learn more about this. But there is a Christian group that is trying to bring about the second coming. They're trying to bring about all the last days events that are supposed to happen with the building of the temple and the Antichrist. They're trying to promote all of that so they can speed things up, because they believe by doing this, that will bring about the return of the Savior even faster. It's reminding a lot of people of the Tower of Babel, how they thought if they could just build that tower, they could get straight up to heaven and speed up that process, make it instant, right? What's interesting is this image here. It says Tower of Babel and new $666, there's the number 666, $666 million Tel Aviv Azrieli Center complex. And so they have this tower that they're erecting that a lot of people are saying looks just like the Tower of Babel. There's the side-by-side images, but this is in the works. And when I clicked on this video, there's the number 113, my pay attention number. So to me, these things are big, but they're not being talked about by the rest of the world. They're really not making headlines. So I just wanted to put that out there as something more to ponder on. All right, since recording this video, there's been some events that have happened. So I just wanted to talk about those for a minute. But first, I want to revisit again the number 9 and talk about the year 2019 and what the number 9 symbolizes. All right, the number 9 can signify the end of a phase in order to make way for new beginnings. And it says in the Bible, we find several examples of a symbolic death in order to pave the way for a rebirth. Just in time for the birthing of God's perfect vision in 2020. Now this gives an example of Herod's temple burning to the ground to prepare for the rebuilding of something magnificent. And then Christ died in the 9th hour of the day, another death signifying sacrifice. Sacrifice for something new and better. There were 9 people in the Bible reported as having leprosy, and also 9 people recorded as being stoned. Again, a symbol of death and also of judgment. God punishes Nineveh for witchcrafts. The Babylonians were well known for using magic and sorcery. Belshazzar called upon his astrologers and wise men to interpret the handwriting on the wall done by the finger of God. God warns his people not to obsess over the signs of heaven, and then false prophets use divination to deceive people into thinking they are talking to God. In the Old Testament, there were 9 groups or individuals who practiced sorcery. God promised to punish the Egyptians and to destroy the counsels of their charmers and magicians who cast spells. Egypt's Pharaoh called upon his sorcerers and magicians to confront the miracles that God was doing. And as you can see, more scriptures dealing with witchcraft, which is something that is definitely prevailing right now in the United States. And this is something we talked about in the last video message. Okay, so in the last video message, I talked a lot about curses and modern day witchcraft and how that's something we need to be aware of because the adversary is heavily using that to work against us, to work against the body of Christ, to work against God's plans. It's just something we need to be aware of. And not too long after I made that video, my son was out. In fact, here's one right here. I didn't even realize this was on my desk. He had found a bunch of these 801 rocks. He finds them all the time. Not because we're looking for them. He's just really good at spotting them when we're out on walks. And he found a bunch of them and he says, "Mom, what are these numbers on the back?" So I explained to him what this is and he wanted to do it. So we went onto the Facebook page and took pictures and posted that he had found these rocks. And there on the Facebook page at the top was a picture of a Wiccan, someone who practices witchcraft, who had painted, here's an image of that, with a witch, and it says Wicca. And they're very proud of that. And what's crazy is all the likes that it got, all the people that are supporting this and think it's awesome. And I can't help but think, what kind of curses are Wiccans putting on these objects and putting on these rocks, and then you find it and bring it into your home? Are you bringing a curse into your home? But it was just so crazy that people are so open about this now. It's becoming more and more popular, just like I talked about in my last video, that witchcraft is cool and it's awesome and there's good witchcraft and people are really drawing to it and supporting it and liking it. And that's something that we really, really have to be cautious of, and just more reason why we need to avoid anything that promotes darkness. If you're new to my channel, I highly recommend that you look up my Halloween video where I talk all about this. All right, I posted not too long ago on my spiritual blog, I'll Stand Tall, this awesome interview that I found of this man who was interviewing 2 Latter-day Saint missionaries. And I just loved this interview. This doesn't have a whole lot to do with what I'm talking about in today's video message, but I just wanted to share it because I feel like this is the kind of dialogue we should be having. If we're truly one and we're truly pure in heart, our hearts have not waxed cold, right? Then we can have these types of conversations and this kind of dialogue with people of other churches. Have it in peace and understanding and cultivate that love. And so for those of you who want to see what that looks like and if that's possible, check out the video link down below. You'll be glad you did. Now I know I mentioned in a past video about time speeding up and time is out, and these are the messages I keep getting. But there's been a couple days over the last few weeks that have been crazy where this really has manifested in my life. And I was talking about this with my sister and she feels the same way. So I'd love to hear from you as well if you're experiencing this. But let me just give you an example. There was one day when I was getting my kids ready for school, I look at the clock and it says 8:27. Well, the bell rings at 8:35. So I'm thinking, okay, it's 8:27. We've got about 8 minutes, so we need to go now. So it says 8:27. I walk over, get my shoes on, grab my purse, walk out to the car, turn it on, look at my phone. All of a sudden it's 8:32. And I'm thinking, how did 5 minutes just pass from me walking through the hallway, putting on flip-flops, grabbing my bag, and walking into the car? There's no way that took 5 minutes. Same phone, same clock. We back out of the driveway, pull out to the street, I go to turn left, all of a sudden it's 8:34. Again, how did a few more minutes just pass with me driving past 2 houses? It doesn't make any sense. And then right as I'm driving up the road, I hear the bell ring. It's blowing my mind, but this keeps happening where I see that I have a certain window of time. I'm watching the clock on my phone, and all of a sudden, several minutes have gone by in what feels like just 30 seconds to a minute of time. It doesn't make any sense. These are activities and tasks that are routine, that I do all the time, that I have set in my mind. I know how long they take. I know how many minutes pass when I do X, Y, and Z. and it's not the same anymore. It's like I'm having to adjust my schedule, shift things around because it's not working out anymore. And that tells me that time literally is speeding up. And I remember hearing about this, I don't know who said it. I may have mentioned it in a past video, but I remember talking about someone mentioned that time really is speeding up, and they explained how that's possible. If you know more about that, please share. But I am experiencing that. I am experiencing we are out of time, time is up. So every last second counts. Every last second is valuable, and we need to be so careful and cautious with how we're choosing to spend our time. Okay, something else I just wanted to point out real quick from our 11th hour group on Facebook. Beth had mentioned something, and I was gonna bring it up in the last video message. I was gonna bring it up, but it was in my notes, but I forgot. So we're gonna talk about it real quick now. So she wrote, going along with a post I made last week about seeing a theme of people falling off of tall heights, this popped up today. Here's a screenshot. All 4 of the people who have fallen at the Grand Canyon this month were older, 50s and 60s, and only one was trying to get a better picture. The others just slipped. The video mentions another fall this last week from another national park cliff. Also, it mentions they generally have 12 deaths at the Grand Canyon a year, but for medical reasons, not falling reasons. This is not normal to have so many falling deaths at once. What's the message in this? Any impressions? I don't think it has to do with the young taking selfies. And then in the comments below, there's a little bit more. And she points out 3 of these Grand Canyon falls were women. She says, I think there's more to it. It's a theme that's been in the media for quite a while. So I pondered about it, and here's what I shared. When I read your thoughts about 3 women and falling, I immediately thought of 1 Nephi chapter 22, verse 14. And every nation which shall war against thee, O house of Israel, shall be turned one against another. They shall fall into the pit which they digged to ensnare the people of the Lord. And all that fight against Zion shall be destroyed. And that great whore who hath perverted the right ways of the Lord, yea, that great and abominable church, shall tumble to the dust, and great shall be the fall of it. The woman often represents the false system of Babylon. This is the scripture I heard in my mind when I saw the spire fall from Notre Dame. The women falling could represent Babylon, the great and abominable church, falling and tumbling to the dust. The Grand Canyon represents a great fall. As they are older women, I think of how long Babylon has been around. Its roots are ancient. And Beth mentioned that she's had a feeling about something falling in the spiritual world. She shared some more headlines. 3 more women falling in the past week. Woman falls 5 stories from New York City apartment building while taking pictures with friends. A woman died after she fell into a meat grinder at work. Australian DJ killed after rushing to help woman who fell 30 feet from his villa's private pool. And then Rebecca commented, I had a thought. I remember Elder Christofferson saying something about how women form the moral foundation of society, almost like a last stand for morality. Adam was content in the garden, but he also followed Eve's lead, and men follow women's lead in a sense today. Women rock the cradles, etc. So when women fall morally, society is not long behind, especially the story where the man was killed after the woman fell. That seemed poignant. The symbolism I'm getting is that as women fall, men and everyone else will be right behind them. Which then, to me, begs this question. How do women rise up? Remember that theme, rise up? There's been a lot of talk about this in recent conferences. I loved that. This whole discussion is really thought-provoking. It's something that definitely warrants more pondering and reflection. I'd love to hear from any of you out there who have any thoughts on this, but we can see a lot of this happening right now with everything that's going on in the world, with all the women who are fighting for abortion and bringing down the morals of America and bringing down the church, with all the people right now that are against religion and against the church and against Christianity. This is what we're experiencing, but according to scripture, all those who fight against Zion shall be destroyed. Some food for thought right there. So back to talking about abortion. The argument that the left often has is they will say, well, There are many unideal circumstances that this causes when an unwanted baby is born. And they'll talk about how a lot of times those children will end up in foster care, end up in the system, and they have a horrible life. So it's better just to do them a favor by not bringing them into this world at all, especially if they were conceived of rape. I have often thought to myself, I wouldn't want to be before the Lord after this life and facing all of those babies who didn't get to have a choice. I can guarantee if you ask those spirits, would you like to have an opportunity at life, or would you rather us just spare you from having a difficult life? We can just prevent you from being born so you don't have to live a life in circumstances that are unideal. I can guarantee you that those spirits would choose a chance at life. They would choose a chance to have a body. And God has a plan for every spirit that is born upon this earth. So for us to say, we don't think your life would be ideal, so we want to prevent you from living, that is like us trying to fulfill the role of God. That is us saying we know better. That is socialism. That is dangerous, and that's what they did in Nazi Germany. They killed babies that were born with disabilities, especially babies with Down syndrome. They didn't even let them have a chance at life because they assumed that they were the less desirable beings of society. They saw them as burdens rather than blessings. Their life had no value whatsoever. We have to be so careful who we support and who we vote into office, because what they support and what bills they vote for will be a reflection on us. We will be accountable for that after this life. We will be accountable for all of that injustice and have to face those spirits who we robbed and also face our God. Now here's a woman with an incredible story, a woman who was raped but decided to keep the baby. Where some would say that would be very damaging to her healing, it actually is the very thing that healed her. I think her story needs to be told, and so I've included the link down below if you want to watch her video and share. Now check out this article from lifenews.com. It says men in China and India can't find wives because 71 million girls were killed in abortion or infanticide. It says that there are 34 million fewer Chinese women than men, and Indian men share this demographic nightmare as well. There are 37 million fewer women than men in India, and that's just simply because of communism. They're only allowed to have so many children because of the population. It's down to one child per family, and most families want a boy to carry on the name. And so of course, if the wife is pregnant and it's a girl, she's pressured by her family and her relatives to have an abortion and try again for a boy. Now with everyone doing this, there are no girls being born. And it says the result, 70 million men who expected to marry and rear children are desperately lonely. Brides are then kidnapped from other countries. Forced prostitution and assaults on women are on the rise to satisfy and take care of these lonely men. The article goes on to say the irony in all of this is that all of these parents who had the abortions and wanted boys now will lose their posterity because their boys aren't being able to marry and are therefore unable to give them grandchildren. So that decision backfired. Choosing a baby girl would have brought them grandchildren and posterity. Because of this abortion and infanticide, there are now 70 million missing women. Nope, abortion surely does not support women's rights. 70 million missing women whose voices were not heard and their voices did not matter. And that is the fate of Chinese civilization. These are the fruits of socialism and communism. Speaking of socialism, someone emailed a link to this video to me and highly recommended that I watch it and spread the word. Well, I have watched it, and I must say, this is a video everyone needs to watch. There is a link down below. Okay, last I just want to share with you a little update. Last week I talked about the meaning in the news about the Kentucky Derby, how there was a message in that whole fiasco. And I talked about how what I was feeling, what I was getting from it, is a breach in security. A breach in security and something to do with the country's house. Either the White House or the House of Representatives, but with government and a breach in security. Well, look at this. This just popped up the other day, so I took a screenshot. And right away, what stood out to me, I circled it here, is data breach. There it is. Trump declares emergency over IT threats. So there it is. A breach in security, warranting a national emergency. And he declared an executive order to take care of this. And again, it's causing more conflict with China because the company involved in all of this is a Chinese company. So I just quickly pulled this from a headline. It says, this executive order declares a national emergency with respect to the threats against information and communication technology and services in the United States and delegates authority to the Secretary of Commerce to prohibit transactions posing an unacceptable risk to the national security of the United States or the security and safety of United States persons. This was a statement from the White House. Now, there's a lot more involved in this, but I'm hearing pay attention, pay attention. This came shortly after the Kentucky Derby race, and that was the message that I got from that, and then here it is. And I'll just put it this way. The adversary is looking to breach our security. He's looking to breach in any way you can. You can look at this at a world level, at a national level, and a spiritual level. He is looking to breach those walls of security and get in and steal. He is a thief that comes to steal and kill. And so to sum this up spiritually, I just want to say that we need to be doing everything we can to strengthen our security, to strengthen our protection so that he doesn't get into our heart. He wants to steal what's in our heart. He seeks to destroy us, to destroy our faith, to destroy our relationships, to destroy the family, to destroy God's kingdom. But we know he's not going to win. He's not going to be able to accomplish that, but he certainly is going to try. Now, this news story was just in tonight that NORAD fighters intercepted Russian bombers and fighters entering the Alaskan air zone. And according to NORAD, this is a common occurrence as of lately. Over the past several months, Russian bomber and fighter jets frequently enter United States and Canadian airspace. And then, of course, NORAD escorts them away. But amid tensions between Russia and the United States, the U.S. military is looking at this as part of Moscow's effort to train its military for a potential crisis while simultaneously sending a message of strength to its adversaries. And as you remember, in the last video message, I talked about their new submarine weapon called Poseidon that they actually plan to have in full combat in the year 2020, so next year. They plan it to actually be operating in combat. A weapon that is designed to take out an entire seaboard. Now, this is highly symbolic of what is happening in the spiritual realm. The adversary is trying to find a breach in our security. And so again, I'm just feeling this urgency to strengthen our families, to strengthen our fences, to strengthen our security, to not allow breaches so the enemy can come in and attack. Again, the best way to do that is to start with ourselves. And that Empowered Through Christ meditation series I've created, I believe is going to be a strong weapon against the adversary. And this is a great way for us to strengthen ourselves so that his weaponry does not work on us, that we repel his advances completely. Now, May has been a crazy busy month. I have been involved in a lot of committees. I'm on a lot of committees right now, and that's not normal for me. Just to give you an idea, I'm on the PTSA committee, planning committee for the event in September, Believers Building Bridges, and the planning committee for my 20-year high school reunion. Now, the month of May is always filled with recitals, performances, final competitions. We have a gazillion birthdays just in our family alone in May. You have Mother's Day, Teacher Appreciation Week, which involves a lot of activities and gift giving. And my son had his Eagle project, which has been big. One of the biggest projects we've ever taken on for anything. A new family that's moving into our neighborhood just across the street. They bought a home, but they won't be able to move in until the beginning of June, and they bought it a while ago. And the yard was just full of weeds, sprinklers weren't turned on, the lawn was dying, and so he rallied up a bunch of people and did a huge project in their front yard and backyard, and it's taken a lot of hours. And we've tried to fit all that in with all of this that's been going on and graduations. So it's been a crazy month, but I just wanted to show you when I clicked on my high school class reunion, this is a group that I created for the reunion. You can see right there, we have 311 members. There it is, 311. I really feel that being on the committee for planning this has been really healing for me in so many ways, just from things from my past. I've really made an effort, so have others on our committee, to make this event very unifying, to bring people together, to have them feel welcome and a part of something, and to not have anyone come feeling awkward, not wanting to be there. We want everyone to feel included, welcomed, and wanted. And we've really talked about that. We've really been emphasizing that, and I feel like we are achieving that. And so there was that number 311, which is a reminder, yes, this is the work we should be doing in every area of our life. This third day power in this 11th hour. That's what it's all about. So I came across this funny video the other day just for laughs. I have a link down below. It's a parody poking fun at how crazy the month of May is. You may have seen this family's videos before. They're super funny. Just take a moment if you want to have a little laugh and check it out. Anyways, those are just my thoughts and feelings this week. I'd love to hear from you. My last video, I recently published a short video of my girls at their clogging competition. That's all it was. There was no words or talking or dialogue in the video. And I noticed that because of that, it allowed comments on that video. So I believe that the videos are flagged for the words that are said in the video. I believe it's just technology, software, picking up on key words that are being said for me, and that's what targets my video and disables the comments. That's how the voices are being silenced on my channel. But it's interesting that that video that had no dialogue or talking in it at all, it was just my girls dancing, did not have the comments disabled. So I'm pretty sure comments will be disabled on this video. That's been the pattern. So again, go to my Facebook page, go to the Happy Lady. That seems to be the easiest place to have conversations. This video will be posted there. Of course, it will also be posted on my blog. If you're not on Facebook, you can go there, allstandtall.blogspot.com. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear the experiences you're having, the thoughts that came to your mind about what we talked about in today's video message. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.